The story here is that apparently in Oita, a prefecture on the east side of Kyushu, there was a 50-year-old translator who had somehow all of her life been a translator, who was participating in a supporting an international marathon event. And in Japan, it's now pretty common that each company, each high school, each university will have exchange students or employees for these companies. That they will go out and hire Kenyan runners, Ethiopian runners, basically all those sort of famous running nations, particularly from Africa. There are a lot of them, and they're particularly perhaps in places like Kyushu, which do perhaps have a large number of Korean and Chinese, but don't have a lot of visually different foreigners, like Europeans or Africans. She went and supported the interpreting there for all of the athletes for the day, and went home and felt motivated to go and write about her experience. And the way that she described the experience, which I see, bless her heart, she didn't write, by all appearances there was nothing malicious in the way that she intended to write it, but she said that she felt like it was a wonderful day. Her experience translating for the Africans, at first it was like communicating with cavemen. Slowly they came out of their shells, and it was lovely seeing them all walking along together like cute chimpanzees. The good news about this is that even on the right-wing xenophobic Reddit 4chan type internet community in Japan that we have on Nichan, the comments are pretty universally the same as mine, which were, how does a person like this become a translator? I mean, my immediate reaction was, oh my god, this person broke the first rule of Translator Club, which is that you don't talk about racist stuff in Translator Club. How does a person like this even become a translator? And it's funny, when I posted this article and the reaction, credit to Rocket News, as they often do, sort of News 24, which picked this up after it had first come out on Itai News, where I picked it up. They seem to follow a lot of the same threads that I do in Japanese. So they summarized the story, which the woman's identity hasn't come out. The city council who was running the event is still trying to figure out how they're going to apologize for this, apparently. But the internet reactions translated here are pretty much the same as me. Like, how does a person like this even get to be a translator? Is she... I don't really understand, actually. And how someone could think that it's okay to call anybody a caveman or a chimpanzee. First rule of being a translator is do not be racist towards the people that you're translating towards. The reactions on the internet when I posted this were also kind of interesting. There was the inevitable people who, of course, the condemnation, for me, the face palming, the oh my god, this person should never be allowed to interact with the outside world ever again and probably needs to find a new profession. But there were some people who pointed out, as is quite often the case, particularly in places like, for example, Australia, where this sorts of thing happens, where a lot of people feel still the urge to read and say, look, I read through this whole thing and I don't think she did this maliciously. I think that she was just misunderstood, but she didn't have ill intent. And I can see that, actually. I can totally see that. I've grown, again, you typically sort of get this in Australia, where in Australia people often express things that to the rest of the world sound pretty terrible. Not quite as terrible as this, but pretty terrible. And I know that people don't often say things with the malintent that it's taken. So this person's saying, I don't think she meant any harm by it, so it's a bit, everyone's being a bit harsh on her. Surely she's going to be so embarrassed by this, she'll learn her lesson. And maybe she will, and maybe that's the good thing if she does learn the lesson. Of course, the thing is, my view on racism is, and it's also, if you talk about, hi, my name is Loco and I'm a racist, the book there, so this is the journey that Bayer ignores. It's probably better to be, in my book, a malicious racist than it is to be an ignorant, innocent racist. In the end of the day, when you say a racist thing, it hurts people. It hurts the people who hear it. If these athletes who she translated for found out that she spent the day helping them, thinking of them as subhumans, thinking of them as cavemen and monkeys, and she was a lovely, normal lady, that's going to be incredibly hurtful to those people. And here's the thing. I know bigoted, racist people who are open about being bigoted. And the thing about those people is that although I, of course, can't endorse anything that they think, at least because they're self-aware, I have seen people who I know are racist interact with non-white people and been perfectly good about their behavior. And they'll do one of two things. They'll avoid the situation, or they'll suck it up and keep quiet and not say what they think. It's pretty rare. I don't think I've ever seen, even knowing people who are prejudiced and who've been open to me for some reason. I remember at university and so on, having these conversations with people at times. Even people who are self-aware of their racism, they will control it at least. They'll recognize that it's not worth walking around with a Molotov cocktail for every single conversation. The problem with ignorant people is that they're always walking around with a Molotov cocktail and they don't realize what they're doing, and they're burning down the houses around them. And when someone says, "Hey, stop burning down their houses," they feel sorry for themselves as victims for being misunderstood. And the problem is that, yes, maybe they are a victim for being misunderstood, but what's worse is, the harm that you've caused, and you've got a responsibility as an ignorant person that obviously causes some sort of harm to correct that behavior and to become a little bit more self-aware and don't be so stupid. But this is some next level shit, I tell you. I can't even imagine how a 50-year-old translator could describe African people or anybody. How would she react if this was Quinn Rankard? Are all the racists white? Well, that's a good question. Looking back, the people that I was thinking about right now, back in time, like when I was in college, were white, and that's what I typically think. What I loved about the book, and I think this is something which, of course, there are different definitions of racist, and some definitions of racist, which include the definition of the societal power relationship, say that you need to be white or you can't not be, you can't be not white and racist, which I don't buy into. I think, of course, you can be prejudiced and racist even if you're not white. By himself, that's not a joke what he says on the front. He was raised a black supremacist. He was raised to be prejudiced against white people, and it took him a long time to deprogram himself, and that's what the book talks about, that journey, about realizing that people are people. In the case not being so, you could say that Baye himself is like that. And the thing about that is that it requires a degree of self-honesty about your own biases and prejudices to be able to confront this. Nobody walks, it's very few, I would say less than 1 in 100 people, probably less than 1 in 1,000 would ever admit to being prejudiced or bigoted in any way. You have to be a pretty long way gone to do that. But the problem is that a lot of people inadvertently at some point will feel, or we're designed biologically to stereotype. Our brains want to process information quickly, and we will subliminally allow ourselves to react and interpret according to the biases that we are exposed to through the media, through our life experiences, and that might offer internally some form of legitimacy for racist views that we have, but it doesn't. If we're not denying that we are racist ourselves, or denying that it's possible, I'm not a bad person, I never think racist things, that's what makes us do ignorant, stupid crap like this lady. Again, this is still pretty far gone. This is way beyond the pale, but the point is, you have to sort of recognize in yourself when, wait a minute, I'm reacting like this, is that right? And the more self-aware, the more you can be a little bit woke, the more you can you don't have to be totally full on and self-effacing about it, but you've got to acknowledge sometimes. I can give an example. When I was in Europe, I was involved in several incidents involving attempted muggings or people getting pickpocketed from my group when we were traveling in Spain, and it was always from the same group of people. It was from people of North African appearance. When I say North African, Arabic, well dressed. And when that happens to you a few times in a few weeks, and this is the only time in my whole life that this happened, I realized a few weeks later that, when I saw people that looked like that, I would cross the street to avoid them because I didn't want it to happen again. And I realized what had happened. I thought about it later, and I was thinking to myself, on the one hand, I was totally exercising what I saw as common sense and safety, but at the same time, I was thinking, well, has this made me prejudiced? And I'd like to think it's not. But I think if I wasn't consciously processing that thought, that's where that thought might become. This is totally different, by the way. This is just a stupid person. But I don't think she gets a pass for being ignorant. In fact, I think she actually doesn't it makes it worse. Being ignorant, being unself-aware, going around doing this is basically like going around with like a flamethrower behind you and not even being aware and getting upset when people tell you to turn off the flamethrower behind you. So I don't care if she's a lovely old lady. I don't care how nice she is. That was stupid. I mean, it was spectacularly stupid. I mean, first rule of Translator Club is that you did not talk racist stuff at Translator Club. How do you expect to get any work translating? How did you even get to be a translator? Being racist and ignorantly racist. It's an incredible story. So I thought you'd enjoy that, and that's the first story for tonight.